This week we have another amazing guest, Stephanie Felix-Sowy. Stephanie and I met almost, 7 years ago, Stephanie? Around there?
Yeah. Been a while now.
And immediately I was taken by her. I admire her work. I admire her as a person. She reminds me a lot of my sister, which is why I embraced her immediately and couldn't wait to collect her as one of my friends. So I'm glad you're here with me today, Stephanie. You have had so much growth since we met that I'm really excited to dig into that, learn more about it, and what's happening in your world now.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me and congratulations. This is exciting.
Let's talk about creating a life and country we're proud of. Together, I'm your host, Alvina Vasquez. Welcome to Alvina Talks Shift. Let's celebrate. What is your title? It's been over a year now, but what is your title?
So I have the privilege and honor of serving as the president of SCIU Local 105 here in Colorado.
And you have been really instrumental in changes in our labor force and our workforce in Colorado. And I want to talk about that and your breakthroughs in labor that is sometimes predominantly male space, and how you've been able to make big changes for the labor force that is predominantly women that are being left behind. Mm-hmm. So it's amazing that you're here and that you're leading at that level. So give us a brief overview of your journey. How did you end up being the president of SCIU Local 105? Tell us more about SCIU Local 105. Why are they so important in the state landscape, and what your role is and what your vision is?
Yeah, so I came back, I've worked for SCIU both nationally and in locals over the last almost 15 years now. It was a big goal of mine to come back to Colorado and do this work as I, raised here, born here, went to school here. And I just saw, and I was able to go out and travel so many states in this country, organizing mostly healthcare workers, and knew that the same things were probably happening in Colorado. And so my goal was to come back and really build on the wins that working people have gained already, that the folks before us have been able to accomplish here in the state, and grow on that. And specifically, when I came back, it was mostly for in the healthcare space. But our local, is what's called an amalgamated local. So we represent folks within healthcare, and that includes mental health professionals, folks at Planned Parenthood of the Rocky Mountains, so in clinic spaces. Kaiser Permanente is our largest healthcare unit. We also represent folks in Colorado who are janitors, right? We represent all the downtown janitors. We represent airport workers, so folks who take care of, our all of the folks who need passenger assistance, right? The janitors at the airport and others. And so it's a very, very diverse workforce. We have security officers as well. And so when I came back, like I said, I came back to really dig in on healthcare, the healthcare arena, really push for policy that changes work, was able to change workers' lives, right, in their industry, but really ended up learning a lot from our membership and those who are in the state in the labor movement, and how we could tie each other's fights, right? So it doesn't have to be a fight for workers in the healthcare industry specifically, and it doesn't have to just be a fight for janitors downtown, but really try to create and be a part of a bigger movement of workers in the state, changing policy, pushing forward standards, not only for themselves within their workplaces and themselves within their collective bargaining agreements, but how we could also use law, regulations, and community, right, and coalition to really expand the reach of the wins and the push of the, the improvements of the standards. So it's been, I would say I learned so much more, I think, than maybe what I've been able to contribute up until this point. But I think that's what the point is, right? Like continuing to learn, figuring out like new spaces you could be in that I myself could contribute to. And I think that's really how I ended up where I am now. I was a director for the organizing department in the healthcare division. I became a deputy director, which allowed me to expand my skills and my input into a majority of the local. And, I think that was really the stepping stone to this position where I could step in when our previous president decided to leave, to bring more, my vision to the group. So very fortunate, I would say. Perfect timing as well. A little bit of that went into it. And just, again, grateful that I could, one, was considered, and two, had the ability, right, to step in, I think, into. And I would say it's a certain point in history where I think we all like figure out where our space is, right, where our place is, and how we can contribute. And so that's definitely a process that I'm in and that our local is in. But I think absolutely now more than any time in the last, I would say, decade, labor, we should be thinking about how we can step up, how we step in, and how we lead more in more spaces, other than just, again, at the collective bargaining table.
What inspires you every day? Like, you have really hard days, I imagine, at the top, and you're fighting really hard fights for folks that are at the edge and really trying to find the resources to build a life here. What is the most inspiring thing or memory that you have doing the work that you do?
My favorite part about the work, since I was an organizer, started off as an organizer, was really the ability to, get to meet members or get to meet people who don't have a union yet, but who really have hopes, right, and dreams of like something different. I think when we talk about like in specifically unions, right, or these movements, I really think that they're vehicles, right, for folks. And so you gotta talk to actually the folks who need those vehicles, right? Like what are they seeing? What do they need? And so many times it took me actually a while to really reflect back, since I started so young in the labor movement, but it took me a while, just until the last maybe 5 or 6 years, to realize that every worker I had spoken to, you find a connection to people in your family, to your friends, right, to like the same struggles. And so being reminded of that daily, I think, is necessary. So many times, one of my big critiques about lots of different industries, lots of different, I think, just leadership structures, is the ability to become so to come to a place where you're just so far from that reality that you get disconnected, right? People say it all the time, right? Oh, this politician is so disconnected, or that CEO is just like living in this disconnected, not reality. And we have the ability, because of just our structure and the way that we're a democratically led organization. I was elected by the members that of the organization. So we have just this like ability to just have at our fingertips like the reality, right? Real. And then when you just can connect that with your own personal reality, as well as, for me, when I started organizing in healthcare spaces, anybody from the janitor in the hospital to the CNA to the nurse in the hospital always reminded me of somebody in my family, providing care, right? Taking care of others, and just like sacrificing so much of themselves. And so that's what I think at the end of a really tough day, it's good to be able to have that as your base.
So here you are now, the president of the largest labor union in the state right now, right? A term a lot of folks are using is imposter syndrome. Mm-hmm. Do you believe in that? Do you have that?
Yeah.
If you do, like, what do you call it? How do you combat that?
Yeah. So I just want to real quick, as far as largest in the state, we're not technically the largest number wise. I do know that lots of people assume that since our members have grown such a powerful presence, I think, in the state over decades of work. So just wanted to make sure that's clear. We're not trying to claim the largest numbers, but we have a really big footprint. I will agree with that part. I think imposter syndrome, I and lots of other folks in positions of leadership that, aren't the typical, I think, leader would be lying if we didn't say that like creeps up on us. Definitely. I think also I'm considered young. I've always been considered young though, because I started in the labor movement so young. Even though, I have 15 plus years experience, it's still, a lot of us look young still. And I think women in general, Latinas, right? You're always told something growing up, and then as you're getting into your own professional spaces about how we need to act, how we need to show up, how we need to be better, right? We need to have all the right answers. We can't really afford to have a wrong answer. And so I think when we get into these leadership spaces, it's really unavoidable to have some of those questions come to mind. You're reminded just by even people who are trying to help you as you're going through, your path. Sometimes can play kind of the opposite, right? When you're in those positions. So it's something that I acknowledge, and I think it's like good for me personally to keep in check, right? Like knowing that it exists, but also not trying not to, for myself and my own growth and my own, pushing myself to be better and to be sharper and to represent my members, in the most effective way possible, not just leaning on that either, right? So like it takes like a real, I think, balance and, self-awareness to figure out, is this just me questioning myself because I have some sort of imposter syndrome that is like ingrained, or do I really, need to evaluate like how I can show up more effectively in this situation, or how I can be more effective for my members, right? So, yeah, it's tough though. There's not a manual on it.
No, there's not. I mean, it's kind of, I think it's like you said, you have to, whether you call it imposter syndrome or self-doubt or whatever, I think different generations call it different things. But what we have to do to combat that is, number one, have friends in common spaces so that we're like, am I really good at what I do? Can you just remind me that I know what I'm doing? I think having friends that are diverse voices, right? Making sure we're hearing from folks that we don't always agree with on everything, but are there to support us and being like, even if we disagree, I think what you're doing is great. So yeah, I think that's right. You have to acknowledge it, move on, cope with it, and just get your work done and not let it be a crutch to not getting things done.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah. And I also feel like, as in the progressive space, right? It's hard to like diversify those voices. And sometimes, you're told that you shouldn't. And I totally agree with that. Like, even if it's, people that I disagree with, or, in my case, we get to negotiate with employers. Like, they're not necessarily always on the same values as we are, etc. But, they have tools too. Like everybody has tools that we can learn from, right? And ways that we can grow from if we just at minimum are willing to observe, and then be open a little bit to having some conversations, even if they are, what we call courageous conversations or tough conversations.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I learned from working with you that I didn't realize is your members represent all political ideologies.
Yeah.
You're not always on the same page on policies that are happening at the state and local level or the federal level. or candidates that are running or candidates you're endorsing. So how do you manage those relationships?
I think that's one of our strengths. One of the reasons why I don't feel like I would ever go outside of labor now um, in my future is because one, the vehicle, right, that I talked about, like this is being a vehicle like for folks to create change, to make change happen. But the other is, like if we're saying in that kind of metaphor, let's say we have a bus, right? We're going towards the same goal. This folks have chosen to join this like jump on, right? They've even purchased their tickets. They're like, I'm on, I'm committed.
Yeah.
And on that bus, you'll have people from all different backgrounds, speaking different languages, gender, right? Like such a diverse representation of what any city in America is. But then again, like choosing to be there on that bus, driving towards the same goal, vision, mission, right? You don't necessarily, especially nowadays with the way that politics are in this country and just, how that's bled over into our everyday life, our everyday culture, you don't always find those spaces, right? And so the difficult part of it is, building consensus around issues that maybe, would cause a divide outside of that space. But the other great part, and I think another, reason why we can accomplish it is because, again, right, like folks get join their unions and they're active and engaged in their unions for an interest, right? Because they believe in something. I would say 9 times out of 10 that I've had conversations with folks, they can really separate that from, right, maybe a political issue that might have caused division. They can say, well, I see, we could agree to disagree on that piece, right? But I do agree that I'm worth more and that my coworkers are worth more. And so I'm going to come and be a part of this, right? This fight for that. So you could build some consensus around those basic issues. The other thing is like, I was in front of a group of Democrats and, you just like encourage them to more often than not, like when they want to talk to specifically SCIU 105, talk to our membership because I use our membership like as a pulse for where America is, right? Because they are so
Interesting.
diverse. Yeah, because, and this
Yeah.
it shows like in a lot of our political kind of processes, right? Endorsement processes, I might think, oh, they're going to go this way, but then they go another way, right? And then I'm like, all right. So they get to guide the process. They get to make the decision, right? It's a process where then they make a recommendation to our board and our board then endorses. And they've been spot on, right? Over the last few years in some races that, others working in politics were like, oh yeah, we know, right? And so again, I think just like having that trust that people who are there because they want to be there and who believe in some sort of, bigger, right, vision of what the world could look like and what fairness is, will make that choice. And then 9 times out of 10, they're like making the right choice. And so I just have tons of trust in that. I have tons of trust in our membership and just, I think it goes both ways, right? Like if they have trust in us and we have trust in them, that like they're making the decisions that need to be made. And, we might get one wrong every now and then because that happens too. But I think it's essential. Like, and again, I'm at an advantage because I get to talk to the members, right? I get to like bat right
Yeah.
around with them. I get to get their opinion. And like, that is literally part of the organizer job is to go out and talk to folks and listen to, what they're going through, their struggles, and then their hopes.
So, what about you are an amazing mother
Yeah.
and daughter and sister and Thea. What is it like? I mean, you're running this huge organization and you have all these other people that you love and you care for that you're also taking care of. How do you balance it all? I mean, I know I struggle with that. How do you do it?
Yeah. It's funny you said that I take care of, they take care of me too. That matters, right? I would say, I come from pretty traditional Mexican family, like all like the whole tiaisms, right? The like abuelas. In my house, my mom is called ama. We have still have our nana. We have tias that are blood tias and not tias that are tias by choice and love, and so it takes a lot. I one of the pluses of coming back to my home state is to have family and friends who have been a part of raising my kiddo. I think, for those of us who are fortunate enough, we have a partner who's as supportive, right? And who doesn't necessarily buy into the historic traditional roles of a wife and husband, right? And then there's sort of like lots of communication and agreement, right, on how we're all gonna like play our parts, right? When I leave town for 3 or 4 days, which my son calls it a vacation because I get to ride a plane, even though it's a work trip. So he tells his teachers I'm on vacation. um, you know, there's an agreement like, okay, who's going to take him to school this day? Who's going to take him to school this day? And when I come back, okay, like you were gone for 4 days. Can you cover drop offs for 2 now? Yeah. Right. So it's just like, never, I don't think any of us, it's kind of, this thing that people say, but none of us do it alone. And I think, I work for a union. We fight for to have rights in the workplace, right? And so with that though comes, being able to also draw your own boundaries, which I know none of us are initially great at. I'm still working on it, but I think drawing those boundaries and then, just getting folks used to respecting those boundaries is a process, right? And we got to like kind of routine it. It has to be something really consistent. But I would say not perfect, but those are the things that I've tended to work, especially as of late with the new position, the new role. I'm interested how you do it too.
Oh, I don't know if I figured that out yet.
Additional secrets.
Oh man, I wish I had it figured out. I mean, the hard part is like, before you have a kid, you're like, yeah, I'll just go home and finish this email or whatever.
Yeah.
But the minute I take my computer out, my toddler wants to be on it.
Yeah.
I got him used to sitting in meetings when he was a tiny baby, so now he wants to be in every meeting.
He's like, this is my job. Yeah.
So yeah, I haven't figured it out yet. I wish it's kind of like when you're working, you wish you're with them, and then when you're with them, you're kind of like, I got to get this stuff done. It's really hard mentally to put yourself there, and then also have enough time for TikTok and
Yeah.
crappy shows on TV.
I watch very little news now, which I used to be kind of like a, news junkie, but because yeah, I'll put the kiddo down. He goes down early, that thankfully, and then go back to the emails and whatnot. But then, like, what do you do to just unplug, right? I think that's really been able to like help me through this process of, more and more coming at me, and then just like acknowledgement that the emails are going to be there in the morning. So let me
They're never gonna
unplug.
go
Let
away.
me like watch some, nonsensical romance, not rom-com, just to like, get my mind somewhere else and then start
And check out.
start back over. Yeah.
I guess our time's up, right? I think this is it. That went by so fast, Stephanie. I have so much more to talk about.
Yeah, no,
Besides the fact
that was quick.
that
Anything,
was
is there
fun.
anything else you
I mean, I guess one thing I would want to ask, what do you think the future is for the labor movement in our state and in our country?
I think it's going to depend on us. Everybody says we're in this moment, we're in this moment. You see organizing, you see younger people getting engaged and interested. We're at an all-time high in approval throughout the country, but I keep trying to remind folks around me like all of that is really, really good, but it's just really going to depend on can we capitalize, right? And how do we capitalize on it? I think, SCIU in particular has done a great job, really, I would say leading on diversifying leadership, right? More of our leadership now reflects, to your earlier point, women of color, who the
Yeah.
majority of the folks we represent in our industries, immigrants, right? And so I think that is really the path, but every opposition in this country is also against that, right? Against what we need to continue this movement and to make it, I think, grow is the key, and then continue having a strong labor movement. If we're being honest, labor's been in decline for a few decades now, and so we got to figure out. I love all the excitement. I love the energy. Like, we need like younger folks in our fight, but we also need everyone else, right? Folks who come along before us, or us now who are currently in it, and younger, a few generations, I would say, to really be on the same page as to how we're going to get the growth we need to continue on, to continue making our own agenda versus our agenda being a reaction to what's happening in the opposition and really the attacks that are coming at us. So that's my hope, but we'll see.
Awesome. Well, thanks for spending the time with me, Stephanie. I know you're super busy right now, and I can't wait for you to get a break so we can hang out and get the kids together.
Yeah, we're going to go win this amazing contract for our Kaiser members, and then I'll take a little bit of a break and jump right back into it.
Can't wait. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for watching Alvina Talks Shift. Please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, engage, empower, evolve. If you liked this episode, or if you want more content like this, go to alvinatalkshift.com or wherever you listen to podcasts.